2023 GR86, manufacture date 4/23, got about 7K miles. This is strictly a track and canyon use car. We're doing an oil strainer cleaning today and an oil baffle install. This has got a pretty crazy backstory behind this oil strainer cleaning. Why don't we go take a look? As typical with track or canyon use, this car already has a Jackson oil cooler installed by another shop, and unfortunately this is one of those where if you follow the instructions to the T, it's still not going to be the right way, and here's what I mean. So during our multi-point inspection, we found the typical cut in the oil cooler line by the headlight bracket. We took the front bumper off to inspect if there was any damage to any other part of the lines. It looks like the other shop did a pretty good job on this install, routing the lines, putting extra protection on the lines where needed. Unfortunately, due to lack of experience, they did not know about the most common chafing area, which is that middle piece by the headlight bracket. So we ended up replacing that particular line for this customer's oil cooler kit. You can see it's a really deep cut. It's really dangerous. Doing the oil strainer cleaning, when I was taking apart this car, it was pretty curious. Some of the bolts were kind of left loose. As soon as I got the exhaust manifold off, I noticed that there was like an aftermarket black RTV, and so I was thinking, maybe the other shop who installed the Jackson cooler also did the oil strainer cleaning. Pulling off the oil pan, indeed, some aftermarket black silicone also applied in excess. So obviously the pan had previously been resealed. Unfortunately, there were circular grinding marks on the upper oil pan face. So obviously when someone did the oil strainer cleaning on this, they used probably an air tool, a rotary grinding tool to grind off the old RTV. Unfortunately, this was a terrible choice, not only because the dust and all the garbage that you grind off gets back inside the crankcase, as we'll see later on, but also parts of the upper oil pan sealing surface were damaged from grinding too deep. Most concerning of all, the plastic oil pickup was actually damaged from the other mechanic who used the grinding tool to grind off the excess RTV. You can see multiple areas of contact on that thing. I don't know what they were thinking. You know, even choosing to use that tool, even if they slipped one time, you'd think they'd stop and rethink what they were doing. But you can see multiple marks on that plastic oil pickup tube. Luckily to me, it looks cosmetic. If you guys don't know, you actually have to remove the entire front timing cover to change that oil pickup tube, which is a huge labor-intensive job. That would have been my ideal solution, to replace the oil pickup tube. But in my opinion, the damage to the pickup tube was only cosmetic, so I recommended to the customer that we should be able to continue running this original pickup tube. Inside the oil strainer, you can see some curious pieces, a little more than I expect for a 2023. Why don't we see what we pulled out? All right, so I have some pieces up here just for reference, and this is actually what I pulled off of the upper oil pan. You can see there's the new black RTV layered on top of the original light gray RTV. So I thought this was pretty poor quality work, to say in the least. You use the wrong tool to take off the RTV, and even using the most incorrect, most abrasive tool, you still did not get all the RTV off. And again, part of the problem with using a rotary tool to clean off RTV on the bottom of the engine, you know, we've done more than 50 of these RTV cleanings already, and I can tell you right now, a lot of what we see in here is not originally what came from the factory, but insufficient cleanup. So the guy who used the rotary tool to clean up the RTV obviously didn't care by the fact of that damaged plastic oil pickup. He of course must have not cared to do a proper cleanup as well. And I would say a lot of these pieces are actually just the old RTV pieces that were thrown into the crankcase by using that rotary grinding tool. Again, one more time, I would say 90% of this was induced into the oil strainer because of using the wrong tool, not cleaning up properly, and just in general very poor quality workmanship. Pretty scary. You can even see that piece of metal. Yes, indeed, I found that piece of metal inside the oil pickup. You can see some foreign material here. I have no idea what that is. That dark or light brown piece, that's not RTV, and that doesn't belong in the engine. So where did that come from? obviously from the guy who worked on the car before. All right, and so here's the craziest part of the story that I found out as the customer picked up the car. So this car actually had another oil pan put on it by the Toyota dealer. Apparently they stripped out his original drain plug during a regular service, and he discovered this because there was a pool of oil underneath his car the next day after the dealership performed an oil change. So he brought it back, they replaced the oil pan, and so that was the biggest kicker for me. I was like, oh, so another shop didn't do this. The dealership actually did this repair, and more importantly, the dealership improperly did this repair and damaged your plastic oil pickup. And almost in disbelief, he laughed when I showed him the pictures. He was like, I can't believe the dealership stripped out my drain plug and then also basically damaged the inside of my engine in an attempt to right the first wrong that they did. And he was like laughing and shaking his head in disbelief, and I honestly can't blame him. So some curious things for me, being this repair was done at a Toyota dealership. Where did this black RTV come from? If you guys have seen in the past, it seems like Toyota dealers are using this lighter gray translucent RTV. When it cures, it's more like the consistency of some really soft hot glue. I'm not quite sure what this RTV is, but every time I see these on engines, it's a telltale sign of like, this engine has had a reseal before by the Toyota dealer. So I'm really curious where this black RTV came from, considering this was repaired at the dealer. And just another word on the proper tools for RTV cleanup. If you've had the oil strainer cleaning done at our shop or have gotten a quote from us, I've let you know that it's an entire day. So basically 9 a.m. until 5 or 6 p.m. And why does it take this long? Well, if you've worked on cars before, you know the longest part of the process is actually the cleanup process. I would say from start to finish, cleaning up the RTV probably eats a good hour and a half. And part of that is because we're using hand tools, including gasket scrapers, razor blades, metal toothbrushes, to hand clean both the engine side and the oil pan side. Why are we using hand tools? I would argue that this is the most correct way. When you're using an air tool like a cordless drill or a air rotary tool with a grinding bit at the end of it, yes, that cleans up significantly faster than doing it by hand. The problem is that when you're using that circular tool, all the old stuff that you're grinding off gets slung everywhere, including the inside of your engine. So all of a sudden, what's the point of doing the oil strainer cleaning? And also, the stuff you slung inside is now contaminating the inside of your engine. I think this is a good case of, like many things in life, doing things the right way usually takes longer and takes time. There's no way around it. And I think in a lot of cases for shops or technicians, it's how much do you actually care? Or in the dealership's case, actually, this oil pan replacement was a warranty job, so this tech had to basically beat the clock. He was getting paid half his wage to do this job. Maybe he was getting paid nothing to do this job. And I'll just give you guys an example scenario. So obviously the dealer messed up. Maybe it was a lube tech who stripped out the drain plug threads. They probably did not give at least I would hope so, they probably did not give the lube tech the job to replace the oil pan, which means either a line technician or a more senior technician was given this job. And because it was a dealer repair or, quote unquote warranty, he would either have to do it for half his wage or, God, I hate to say it, but maybe even for free. Because again, the dealer has to eat this cost. This was not a customer paid job. To sum it up, what's going on in the technician's mind is, I'm just going to do this as quickly as possible and kick this out the door so that I can actually get a job or a work order that will pay me a real wage. And that's just unfortunately the state of working under the flat rate pay system at a dealership nowadays. And it was a little bit, I guess, funny and sad that during the repair process of this car, I got an email from another customer that said he had a standard oil change and tire rotation done, and then he attached pictures of one of the wheels missing, and he said, yeah, I picked up the car, and not a mile later of driving, and the wheel came off and flew off the car, which means the front end drug against the ground. And so he was basically asking, after the car comes back from a body shop, for us to do an inspection because they don't trust the dealer to make any more repairs on this car. I know this is another RTV cleanup video, but you guys have probably seen my other videos from my experience working at the dealer. And I still keep in touch with a lot of people who work at the dealer. A lot of them are I've worked with in the past, and unfortunately still stuck at the dealer and feel pretty hopeless. But to sum it up, I don't really want to say that a lot of this is a dealer tech's fault, especially if you're a newer technician. I definitely think it's a systematic issue where if you're a younger or newer technician and you make mistakes, I don't think inherently it's because you're dishonest or you're stupid. I think it's just because you don't know. You don't have the experience yet. And I can tell you, in the case of the wheel falling off, it was a track customer. And so I guarantee you, I'm pretty sure I know what happened because I've seen it all the time. When you run aftermarket wheels, in my opinion, the right thing to do is run a hub-centric ring inside so that the weight of the wheel is on the hub of the vehicle instead of the weight of the wheel being on the studs. And so what happens during usually a tire rotation, when you take the wheels off, some of the hub-centrics stay on the hub, they get stuck there, some of them stay on the wheel. And again, I've seen this all the time where a younger tech will just do the tire rotation, not realizing that the hub-centric is stuck inside the wheel. So that means you're installing the wheel onto a hub with two hub-centrics, and you torque down the wheel, and yeah, it torques down, it gets tight, right? But not knowing that the wheel's actually not fully seated because you've installed two hub-centric rings onto that wheel. I see it all the time with younger or inexperienced techs. And so this is probably what happened. The customer drove for a little bit, and of course, you've just torqued basically two pieces of plastic together, and I bet you the wheel's doing this, right? And then basically the studs are gonna break or the lug nuts are gonna fall off and the wheel's gonna fly away, which is, I guarantee you, what happened in this case. Again, to sum it up, under the dealer system, you are trying to get work out as fast as possible, right? So not as, I tell my techs here, I never tell you guys to work faster. I tell you guys to work more efficiently, right? Huge difference between the two. When you work fast, especially as a younger tech, there's no time, and you also get no guidance if you're not sure about something. There's no one there to basically mentor you and check and say like, hey, make sure you take out all the hub-centrics before you put those wheels on, or hey, don't use that rotary grinding tool on the bottom side of the engine. Maybe on the oil pan it's okay, but not the bottom side of the engine, for these reasons. Or, hey, if you're not sure how tight to tighten that thing, look up the torque spec and get out a torque wrench for the oil drain plug, or else you're gonna damage it and cause a mess for everyone. Oh, man. Big sigh, because that's just the state of our industry. Again, a systematic issue where you force a younger, inexperienced person to rush out work and nobody is there to guide them. And I honestly think that's a lot of where these dealer mistakes come from. If you guys have any solutions, please let me know. Leave it down in the comments below. Pretty unfortunate situation. Luckily, we were able to correct a majority of it for the customer. But unfortunately, this is where we're at nowadays, where the manufacturer cannot fix your vehicle correctly. Again, you bring your Toyota vehicle to Toyota and they cannot fix it correctly. What are we gonna do?